Today I'm going to talk a movie that I was supposed to be talking a while ago, but I do have a perfect excuse why I didn't. I'm making this review at this point, weeks after this movie came out, and that is because this movie didn't come out on the movie theater that I usually like to go, the one that is kind of a few blocks from my house. So you know, and that's sad because I was really anticipating for this movie, but the only way I could watch this movie is to go to New York. And I tried to limit myself going to New York because well, it's freaking expensive, I'll say. I mean, most of the movies that I go there, if I have to, it's kind of like $15 or $16. And considering the trip, and also that I don't want to, usually I get distracted and I want to turn it into kind of like a field trip every time I go to New York. It's kind of a little bit restraining on my budget. But when it's necessary, I do go, and this is a movie that I actually really anticipating. It is sad that I had to take an extra planning and calculations in order to get there. And I finally did it and decided to go watch the latest Wes Anderson movie, Isle of Dogs. Before I begin to what do I think about this movie, let me clarify you a little bit saying that I'm not particularly a Wes Anderson fan because honestly I haven't seen any of the Wes Anderson movies. Almost none of it, except one. It was during my trip to Los Angeles, in which I had the luxury to pick up a movie that I haven't watched in the airplane. And the movie that I decided to pick is none other than Fantastic Mr. Fox. I heard about the story, and I'll give you a little bit of skinny of Fantastic Mr. Fox. I thought the movie was a little bit dull, in my opinion. It was kind of dull. I wasn't in the more. It took me a while to get into it, but I didn't feel that I was very invested with Fantastic Mr. Fox. So I don't know if it was the plane ride, but honestly, I thought it was okay, just okay. I was not a big fan of Fantastic Mr. Fox. But either way, like I said before, I haven't seen any of the Wes Anderson films. I'm sorry, I haven't seen The Life Aquatic. I haven't seen, what was it? Moonlight, something like Camp Moonlight, I don't remember. I haven't seen The Grand Budapest Hotel. I just keep hearing about the style, but the only explanation that I have with the style is when I watch that episode of Family Guy where it makes fun of it. So as you can see, I'm gonna go talk about this movie in particular without any knowledge of any of the styles of Wes Anderson. So take it as a kind of like a first timer of someone who is getting a little bit of a grasp of this director. So let's begin. So Isle of Dogs. Like I said, I was very curious. I was really expecting this movie. First of all, because I love animation. I love when they try something different that is not normally seen especially for American cinema, and with a very traditional stop motion. I had to go there. It's not every time where you see something like that. You're gonna get once in a blue full moon or something like that, but where most of the movies that they show on the big screen are mostly CGI, or in this case digital animation. It was kind of a little bit refreshing to watch something like that. And well, Isle of Dogs is one of those that I was so impressed by the technique that they use on stop motion that I just had to go there. I'll get to that. I'll go into much details later. But but in short, I'll tell you what the story is about. So Island of Dogs is set in a kind of like a little bit of a distant future. We're set in, weirdly, Japan, where where this mayor named Mayor Kobayashi. It's kind of like a tongue twister when it's about Japanese language. Well, Mayor Kobayashi, he's a corrupt mayor and later re-elected mayor to be re-elected or something like that, in which he issues an order to exile every single dog in Japan to this island called Trash Island, mostly because there is this flu that is they're affecting the dogs, and yeah, that is considered a pet. So every dog, no matter if it's stray or domesticated, they're all sent to this filthy island called Trash Island. And then 6 months later, we see our protagonist, a group of 5 dogs, in which one of them it is a dog named Chief, played by Bryan Cranston, he's kind of like the only one who was born stray compared to the others in the group, and fate kind of appears into them when this 12-year-old boy named Atari, he lands into the island, and they find out that this kid is looking for his dog named Spot. Because apparently this kid has a big love to his dog, and he has a big relationship to him, mostly because, let's say that this dog is kind of like his bodyguard / guide dog, because the kid is a little bit disabled, because the kid, he was a survivor of a traffic accident, in which by tremendous irony, he's also the adopted nephew of Mayor Kobayakawa. And well, the kid had to grow a strong bond with the dog, but after he was exiled, the kid couldn't take it, and he decides to go there and try to find him. So to find this dog. So technically, the movie then sets up as it kind of divides itself into this kid and these other dogs in their quest to find that missing dog, but at the same time, we got the human part where Mayor Kobayakawa is running the re-election, but you also see the corruption behind it, his total disdain to dogs, that he just kind of has this enormous hatred to the point that he just wants to have them gone, and they're trying to capture the kid to bring him home, despite the kid fighting against them because he's against all these things. There's political stuff. There's also this subplot involving this girl named Tracy. What was it called? Tracy. There's this girl who is an American transfer from Japan who is fighting for the rights of the dogs and all this stuff. It's pretty much a little bit of a convoluted plot, let's say, but it's funny that how many things happen in a plot so simple that it's just about a boy trying to get his dog back from a junkyard island, and it grows into something that is so big that in a way you could either take it or leave it. I'm kind of surprised that there is a big mixture on the reviews. Some people who are not some into movies kind of don't like this movie, or some they hate this movie. Well, not technically hate it, they just like it. And many of the pompous mainstream critics, they absolutely love it. But you might be asking, okay, what is my opinion? Okay, here goes. Like I said, I'm not a Wes Anderson fan. I don't consider myself a professional. I'm just a guy who loves movies, and that's that. And sometimes I come off as a little bit of a forgiving guy. So if I have to summarize, I gotta admit, I love this movie. I love Isle of Dogs. was enjoying this film mostly because I have this adult mentality out of it, and I'm the kind of guy who I am very, very against that typical mentality of adults saying that you should not show this. This is animated and it's not appropriate for kids or something like that. Look, I'm the kind of guy who I will even allow a 6-year-old boy to watch Family Guy or The Simpsons. Because, you know, life is like that. It's not, everything is not candy or happiness and all this stuff. And you know what? I grew up with those kind of animation while I was growing up. It's part of life. I mean, here's an interesting thing. This is the movie kind of reminds me a little bit when I was a kid, and I saw parts of Watership Down. And I remember that I think I was 7 or 8-year-old when I saw parts of it. I might not understand the film and its themes, but little by little, you're gonna get it. You will wake up that curiosity to know what was I missing. And I Little Dogs is no exception, because the themes that this movie has about animal cruelty, corruption, rebellion, and all this stuff. That it strong semantics that people might say that you should not show that to kids. Oh balls! I encourage you to at least have children watch it. You know, there were even though that wasn't a small movie theater and there were many kids. The kids were fine. They actually really liked this film. They did understand it well, and they probably have a little bit of a good understanding of the things that are going on. Despite that, there are scenes that are a little bit, well, let's say that mangy. I mean, there is a scene in which one of the dogs rips the ears out of another guy, and well, no, not another guy, another dog. That leads me to how much I absolutely like this animation. The animation and the art style that they decide is pretty impressive. It's this traditional stop motion animation, and there's a lot of details on how the characters look. Especially on the dogs, because the dogs are not technically cute. Their hair are very shaggy. You can see them that they have ticks. They have their bodies. They are sometimes rotten. Their eyes, they're down. And later you're gonna find out that dogs has been experimented, which is heartbreaking. Although it is not as shocking as Plague Dogs. Oh god, that movie's really shocked me, especially on how... I might gonna talk about it sometime, but not this time. Also, I kind of admire a little bit of the human design, especially on the kid named Atari. The kid is designed is showing that well, how can I explain it? First of all, the kid is almost disabled. He is crippled. He is crippled to the point that he needs a stick to walk. And also, you can see that he has bolts stuck on his head. You can see his black eye from injuries. He has a kind of like a burn here and there, and that is admirable. But speaking of, but now jumping on the artiness, let's talk about the cinematographic and the narrative style that it has, which this is what has people questioning a little bit, and I kind of understand it. One of the biggest things that this movie has is that while it is set on Japan, it felt like it kind of clashes in itself of what kind of movie it wants to be. And if it wanted to be culturally a tribute or an appropriation, it kind of clashes in itself, but it doesn't do as bad as Ghost in the Shell, so I kind of forgive it that. The thing is that the movie, even at the beginning, explains that while we're gonna hear the dogs talking, the movie is aware that we have to take it in consideration that while the dogs are talking, they're mostly gonna be understand that in their world that they're barking. So when they're speaking English, where in order for the audience, for the sake of the audience, but considering that in the world of the humans, every single human speak in Japanese. Every single human speak in Japanese except for a few characters where they either need translation or the main character, or the character of Tracy, the exchange student. The thing is that many people are kind of conflicted because when they speak Japanese, they're not subtitled, at least for a little bit. They're usually translated, but this kind of makes people feel like, dude, we don't understand what you're saying. Honestly, I didn't have too much trouble because I'm not a Japanese speaker, but I am a big anime fan to at least have a little bit of a vague understanding of what they're saying. So when they speak Japanese, there are some parts that I could understand. Even though it is thanks to the dogs that kind of talk about that they did understand, which many people begs the question, if this is a setting of Japanese, why the dogs are talking in English? Technically good question, but how did you ever pay attention? It is said on the title. The title said that that when the dogs talk, it is for the sake of the audience, not for the sake of what the world is. They are talking for the sake of the audience, where the dogs speak in English, and while the others are Japanese. Not even, which kind of begs the question that there are some scenes in which I kind of swear that especially the kids do understand what the dogs are saying. But this is technically left ambiguous. Speaking of voices, we gotta. It is a little bit admirable to see that Wes Anderson managed to round up a whole all-star cast in this movie, both in some Asians and some Americans / I think some of them are British. Like I said, the main dog, Chief, he's played by Bryan Cranston. And the other four dogs, there were what was it? One of them was Edward Norton, Bill Murray, Jeff Goldblum, and what was the other? Bob Balaban, and we also have what was it? Scarlett Johansson there. Geez, Scarlett Johansson, you're getting overrated a little, honestly. So, and from the human side, we also have Ken Watanabe, and well, the kid is played by this kid named Koyo Rankin, according to IMDb, which I watch it and always see her. There's also Greta Gerwig, and can you believe that there's a character named Yoko Ono, and it's played by Yoko Ono? What can I say? What can I say? But there's something odd in the voice acting that this is a little bit of a nitpick. If I have to demoralize a little bit the ego of this movie, because there's some aspect that I do kind of agree with some people that I don't find it bad, but I find it that this kind of harms the movie a little bit. The first of all is the kind of narrative that they have. It is really slow paced. The movie is slow, so don't expect something bombastic like a Disney movie or things move on and on. No, it's a slow burn. So in order to enjoy this movie, you have to be wide awake and trying to pay attention. And I think many people always complain about slow burning movies that they make you sleep and all this stuff. In a way, it can be forgiven, but sometimes I want to tell people that if you don't enjoy a slow burn movie, that it does have some good qualities. Sometimes the problem is not the movie. The problem is you. You are the problem, that you can't stay awake. It's kind of like, I understand. People go to the movies to enjoy. But sometimes you have, it is good to take an advantage, when you take advantage of learning and enjoyment. When you balance both things, yeah, you can enjoy it. So have some little effort on it. This is why I wasn't bored with this movie. Some people kind of boring. Fine with me. Just think about what I said. But most of the slow pacing, I do agree that mostly stems on one of the problems that I do also had with Fantastic Mr. Fox. That is the way they talk. Sometimes when the dogs talk, their conversations are a little bit stiff, I will say. They call it stilted, but sometimes I call it stiff because they're kind of like, hey, you know that this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this. Oh yeah. We're gonna do this. So it felt like when they talk, they kind of tries to not have too much of that emotion. They feel a little bit robotic, considering that now that I think of it, the design of the dogs, they kind of look like what will happen if taxidermy began to move. Yeah, I kind of forgot to say that I don't know, for some reason they look like what will happen if taxidermy comes to life. Ugh. And also, well, sometimes some narrative elements kind of feels like they don't mix well with some of the narrative. One of the biggest complaints that I've been hearing from this movie is the subplot of the transfer student Tracy. Some people found her annoying. Some people find her useless. Let me try to defend her plot. I understand that it feels like she doesn't do much on the part, but I kind of liked her plot, in which she is a character that it comes from another place and finds out that there is some kind of cruelty happening on a country that, even though it's not her own, it is an universal problem, that she tried her best to be this conspiracy theorist, and well, she doesn't get too much allies because they don't take her seriously because, well, not because she's an American and she's crossing into territory that it could be potentially dangerous or probably murderous. And her only ally, at least, is this hacker who doesn't talk, but man, if only we could see more about this hacker, that would have been awesome. And I really liked the scene in which she snaps out to the Yoko Ono character. I'm not gonna reveal what happens, but let's say that I am one of those guys that I'm happy that it happened. But yeah, in a way I do admire her strong-willed personality, that she tried her best to defend all the people who are pro with the dogs, and she's kind of like a character who is a little bit of a glimmer of hope and on a society that has been brainwashed by a corrupt society and poisoned by a hatred of a corrupt tyrant who has a shady background in order to keep his popularity rolling. That's technically technically the way I can defend this character maybe is not valid, but you know what? It'll be interesting to talk about it, and when we have this conversation about the thematics about this movie, that makes a movie worth watching to discuss. Although I do have to agree that the movie could have benefited more if there was a little bit more of an interaction between her and the character of Atari. Because the heart of the movie, when it's about relationship, is mostly on Atari and Chief. Atari and Chief are technically the heart of the movie. Mostly because we have this kid who is looking for a dog that he grew up with him, and he helped him to go on with his life after he lost his parents, and he has to deal with his disability. But then we also have Chief. Chief, he's a stray dog who he also has some kind of a past in which it shows why he doesn't trust humans, in which he grew up all his life being chased by humans until he was given a chance to be a proper dog, but his fear made him one mistake that it cost him. I'm not gonna reveal too much, but when you know all these and then you see the dedication of this kid to fight for the defenseless, you find some kind of admiration to him. And in a way, it doesn't necessarily have to be dogs. I wish this movie could also relate to all other animals, considering that I'm much of a cat man. I'm a cat lover more than a dog lover. But I do understand the positioning of what this movie is trying to say. But again, that's my personal opinion. You know, as a cat lover, I actually feel relieved that there was no cat cruelty or that usually happens in this movie. I just want to punch him. Cats are not supposed to be evil. Sorry, you know what? I'm not gonna go into that territory. Maybe some other time. But what I will say is that one of the things that did keep me going into this movie is that I absolutely like the mood and the setting that this movie had, especially because of the kind of ambient soundtrack that it had with all those Japanese drums, and that it kind of felt like it was that this is a movie that made me feel like I was going to experience a samurai war. There is a thematic of samurai and pride and all this stuff that is kind of hidden there, but man, that these drums, the music, it felt like this movie was. It didn't feel like a quirky movie. It felt like I was watching a samurai war movie. And honestly, I'm a big sucker of that kind of things, and it hooked me into it. And I think that's the last thing I could say about Isle of Dogs. Do I recommend it? Yes, I do. I absolutely love this movie. I don't care what the other people said. I made my research before talking my thoughts about this movie, and I've been hearing that this is kind of like a love letter from Wes Anderson to forgive all the dog killing that he made in the previous movies. Probably, yeah. I mean, I saw a Watch Mojo movie in which I see a dog that has been pierced by an arrow. I mean, I don't think that Wes Anderson should be the only one who should be forgiving about the animal death on movies. I think every single movie, even mostly the horror movies, should be doing that. With all the dog deaths that I have been seeing in the recent horror movies, I don't think that Wes Anderson should be the one who should be who should be apologizing to dogs. They should be apologizing to every single animal you can see. Okay, I was kind of nitpicky. If you're not into this kind of, well, okay, for the sake of discussion. It's a little bit artsy. I understand. Sometimes artsy can be a little bit pretentious, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. Sometimes we have to be a little bit egocentrical to convey something fresh in the movie screen. It can be annoying, I know that. But you know what? At least this gives a little bit more spice into life. And so this is why I am a little bit of a minority saying that I can defend this movie. I really, really, really like this movie. If you don't like slow-paced films, fine. It's nothing to, well, cry over it. If you're complaining about cultural appropriation, I've seen worse cases. And this is not one of them. And if you're complaining about, this looks a little bit too mature for children, this one I wholeheartedly disagree. Show that to children. Or leave it aside and children by curiosity, they'll watch it. I don't care if this movie is for 12 or age or up. They'll eventually know, or they'll grow into curiosity. Just don't restrain them. Guide them. Life is like that. But at the end, whatever this movie touch your heart or not, it all depends on you, on how you view it. Maybe the movie is a little bit too intellectual to have a little bit too much emotion for a little bit of stiff designs and characteristics. So in order to find the heart of it, and you need to try a little bit hard. But seriously, go hug your dog. You kind of deserve it.